Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. I've been writing code for a living for over 10 years now. In addition to running Parsity, my online coding school, working at boot camps throughout the Bay, doing contract jobs, basically my life has been consumed with writing code for the last 10 years. And you may think I'm an excellent developer, that all those years made me a really, really good developer. And I hate to tell you, I'm somewhere, I think, north of average. I don't think I'm ever going to be the best developer on a team. In fact, if I am the best developer on the team, I probably want to leave that team. I've been the best developer. It's hard to learn when you're the best coder in the room. You're not going to learn a lot. I'm on a team now where I'm definitely in the middle as far as code quality and the way I construct and architect things go. But I've always been a pretty good manager as well. And I've learned how to navigate my own career in tech without a CS degree, without a background, without having a computer background at all, or really messing with computers as a kid. I've learned through tons of trial and error how to do decent in this job. It's definitely not for everybody. In fact, if I'm being honest, I spoke to a person who was interested in Parsity a day before recording this episode, and she decided not to move forward with Parsity. She had been listening to the show. She really liked our philosophy, what we're doing, how we teach, small cohort sizes, the really personal touch. But when she thought about actually doing this as a career, she said, I don't know if I really want to do this as a career. And I said, well, you know what? As much as, I run a business and I want you to join the business, right? And get money and stuff like that. This is a really good epiphany to have now, rather than 6 months into the program where you get out, you get a job and you realize I just bought myself a job that I hate. That is a terrible, terrible experience to have. I've seen that happen to people, even though it's not as common as you might think. It's maybe it's more common than you might think, actually, if I'm thinking about it. I remember a guy at a boot camp I was teaching at 7+ years ago. He was really good. He was in sales. He actually got a job, got hired before the boot camp was even over. Wasn't really that good at coding either, to be completely honest with you. And he hated it. He quit. And he went on to become a police officer, and he seems much more happy now. Go figure, right? I think if you're only chasing the money in this career, which we're going to get into in a minute, or if you're doing this for not quite the right reasons, I don't want to make it sound like you need to jump into coding only if you really love to code or something like that. But I do think there are a few pieces of advice that I wish I knew before starting out that I want to give you. They're just 3 really simple, yet highly effective pieces of advice I'd give to anybody who wants to start software developing as a career, or maybe you just started and you're just on your path. And here's some things that I wish I knew when I first started off. First piece of advice is maybe just don't do it at all. Harsh one, right? Didn't think I'd start off there, did you? Maybe don't do it. So yeah, I have an online coding school. I have a business, and it's directly affected by your desire to want to join that business. I have a very small business too, and I'm not going to accept everybody. So maybe just don't. A lot of big boot camps won't tell you that. Maybe just don't do this at all. Why do you want to be in coding? I'm always curious why people want to code. And so when I ask people whether they join Parsity or the boot camps that I've worked at in the past, and they just say money, and that's it. And I get a little bit nervous for them. And I want to be really clear here. There's nothing wrong with changing careers to get more money. We live in a capitalist society where you trade money for bread. You want to go on vacations with your kid. There's nothing wrong with wanting more money. And if coding can help you get more money, great. But if that's literally the only reason you're changing careers and learning this super difficult skill, I don't know if I would do it. I know a couple software developers, literally a couple that I've met over the years, who don't enjoy writing code outside of work. And a couple of them crushed it, or one of them crushed it at least. He was a tech lead at a former company. He now works in big tech at IBM. Super smart dude. I will also say that this is not the norm. This is just not the norm. According to Stack Overflow, around 70% of developers write code outside of work as a hobby. That's 70%. So that's the overwhelming majority of developers are writing code outside of work because they like to do it. Tech moves really fast. This is a little bit different than being a plumber or working as a lawyer, perhaps, where you learn a set of rules and things that you need to do to perform your job. And then you kind of don't really have to keep up with them at such a breakneck pace. In tech, on the other hand, it moves so fast that if you're not building little projects on the side, you're not learning, you're not interested in learning outside of work, you're going to fall behind so fast and become obsolete so quick that it'll make your head spin. The tech stack that you use to get hired is not going to be the tech stack that's going to keep you hired in 2 or 3 years. And in 5 years, it's going to wildly change. And in 10 years, you'll be unrecognizable. So if you haven't been keeping up throughout that time period and you don't find some sort of joy in learning, I don't see this working out for you really well. Unless you get to one of those big companies, you just stay there forever. And those companies don't really exist anymore from what I understand. I don't know anybody that's worked at the same job for more than 10 years nowadays. It's really, really unique to find that kind of thing. Over the last 10 years on my own, I've gone through 5 tech stacks, 3 programming languages. I've moved between 6 or 7 companies at this point. And in order to get this big bag that you're after, you're going to have to work weekends, nights, outside of work. And if you're a career changer and you don't have a technical background, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. That first year is going to be tough, and you're going to have to work outside of work quite a bit just to keep up, most likely. If your goal is to stand out, do really well, have an accelerated career trajectory, you're going to need to do these things. Just being straight up with you. I have to be honest. And I'm not saying this to discourage you or gatekeep you. I hear people say that all the time. Don't gatekeep. I don't. I just want to be super transparent with you. And this is the most likely scenario. By the way, if a big bag, the big salary is all you're after, that's the only thing you want more money. Again, nothing wrong with that. I would suggest checking out one of these 4 different functions that are often found within tech organizations. 1, sales. 2, product management. 3, design. 4, marketing. You can make a ton of money in these positions. Also, a lot of times they're more important than the engineering organization, especially in non-tech companies. Sales and product management, these people get paid a ton. They can get paid a ton. So I've met salespeople making way more than your average developer. Product managers tend to make at least 6 figures and above. They are closer to the executive team a lot of times. I just feel like these kinds of careers have a lot of upward trajectory too, and don't require you to learn a ton of really difficult skills like coding, deployment process, the software development lifecycle, unit testing, tons of stuff that you'll need to learn to be just barely hireable as a software developer. You don't really need to learn these things to be in any of these different positions that I just mentioned, and you can still make a ton of money. So these are things you should consider at least. Second piece of advice, do what scares you. I started off learning to code around 30 or so. I had 0 prior experience, and I just wanted to be an HTML and CSS developer. I'm just a chill guy who likes writing HTML and CSS. What's wrong with that, right? I tried JavaScript a little bit, and it freaked me out. I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get paid to do this. I can barely code my way out of a paper bag. I got decent at JavaScript. I was using jQuery at the time, and I was actually pretty decent with using it to like make interactions on these little funny sites. I made a website for the city of Oakland, where I'm from. I made a website for a buddy, through an organization that my buddy owned for an architect firm, and had some light jQuery stuff in there. Never really got it or understood like things like closure or the event loop, all these things that I knew or that I thought I had to know in order to become a working developer. I'm like, this is way too difficult. Then I got my first job, and guess what I had to learn? SQL, C#, JavaScript, .NET, AngularJS. Whoops. So here I am in a very, very full stack, very traditional stack that I had to learn and get used to. And guess what? I learned it. It wasn't impossible. It also wasn't easy at all. I had just set my sights way too low. I had told myself, only these geniuses, only these people that have gone to computer science schools or have computer science degrees and fancy degrees, these are people that understand this stuff, not me. I'm going to leave it to those nerds out there. And then I became one of those nerds. And now I do a lot of back-end stuff, which I really enjoy. I still do a ton of front-end stuff, but basically my career has been spent doing JavaScript. And thank God, because if I had just gone down the HTML and CSS route, I can basically tell you I'd be like unhireable. I mean, no one's really just hiring HTML and CSS developers. Maybe back in 2012 or whatever when I first started coding, but now that's just not a thing that's going to happen. So I see a lot of early career developers also doing this, people learning to code, or they're really early in their career, and they say, I just want to do front end, or I just want to do back end. I don't want to touch that other stuff, right? And you want to avoid data structures or algorithms because it sounds too mathematical or something like that. Don't do this, right? I was never good at math in school. I'm beginning to learn a little bit of linear algebra, a little bit of calculus.
these things aren't impossible to learn, right? I'm not going to be good at them. Maybe I might not be great at them, but you're going to reach the upper limit of what you're capable of. Everybody has some upper limit, right? Maybe your upper limit is really high and you have no clue. You've been told you suck at math. You haven't used math for decades, and now you're afraid of it. Or maybe you've heard the word data structures and algorithms, and you've looked at a problem or two and you say, I have zero clue how to approach this, and you don't know what to do. So don't let your history dictate your future, right? Just try it out. Don't limit yourself based on nothing, right? If you do something and you suck at it, you say, well, hey, I kind of do suck at that. Maybe I'm not going to be the greatest at data structures and algorithms, but I stand by this. I feel like everybody can be decent at something with enough grit and persistence. You can be decent at it. You might not be great at it, but you can be decent at it. So stop setting your sights too low. The best meta advice that I could give you is to chase uncomfortability. You take on projects just outside your comfort zone when you get that first job. You say, I want to learn how to do this thing that's a little bit scary, because that's how you force your own growth. When you brush up against concepts that seem kind of magical, I used to hate when people say this, and I used to say this too, code magic, or, oh, it just magically works. No, it doesn't just nothing magically works. It works because it works, and you need to figure out why. And if you don't know why, you must figure it out, and it's never been easier to figure this stuff out. ChatGPT, the freaking internet. I mean, every question you have has been answered 128 times on the web. Go find those answers. You really need to. And don't just apply this to like coding. Apply this to everything. Public speaking, offering suggestions during meetings, investigating tough bugs, being nicer to your spouse, or working out. I mean, everything is learnable and doable. Do those things which scare you a little bit. This is just the best like piece of advice in general, because most of what I've done in the last 10 years, going from like addicted to drugs to writing code for a living, to doing this podcast, to writing online all the time, these have all been really uncomfortable things to do. None of these things are like, oh yeah, I can't freaking wait to do these things. There was a part of me that was really excited to do this stuff, but also a big part of me that says, what the hell do you know about being on a podcast? Or why would anybody want to listen to you and what you have to write? And doing that really freaked me out, but it's also been some of the biggest unlocks and accelerators in my career. So I would say, always do a few things that you don't find comfortable. It's the quickest way to grow. It truly is. It sounds a little corny, but I'm a corny kind of guy. So there you go. Last piece of advice is you need to make some safe bets in your career. Let me explain. There's way too much to learn out there. There's a new framework to replace the one you just learned about. Vue, there's Angular, there's something that came out last week. Someone said use Redux. Someone says never use Redux. There's obscure algorithms you need to learn for the interview. A new AI tool just came out. It's going to replace us all. Oh no. If you chase every shiny new technology, or you listen to every headline out there, you're going to be in a learning loop, and you're going to become what I call a Swiss Army knife developer. You can do a little bit of everything poorly. I've met a lot of you out there. Don't become one. It's the person that says, oh, I got to get an AWS certificate. I need to learn SQL. Now Mongo. Now Vue. Now Angular. Now JavaScript. Oh, JavaScript sucks. Python. Python sucks. Now Rust. Now C#. Now Java. Now they know nothing, right? They have like a smorgasbord of technologies on their resume, and they can barely do any of these things, right? They can speak a little bit about each one, but they can't really build anything of value with these things. That's definitely not where you want to be. Instead, you should do this. Identify mega versus micro trends in software development. So mega trends might be like Kubernetes, Next.js, TypeScript, generative AI. These are mega trends. These are things that you cannot ignore. It's very clear that these things have risen in the market and are becoming dominant forces, technologies that everybody is using. By the time something's a mega trend, you already know it's a mega trend because you see it in every job posting and things like that. You see articles written about it all the time. Rust might even be considered a mega trend in software at this point. But, is it really highly used? I don't know. But there's easy ways to identify mega trends. You go on LinkedIn, you go on Twitter, you read articles on Medium, and you can kind of see what are people talking about. You can look at job descriptions and identify these mega trends. The reason why they're called mega trends is because they're pretty easy to spot.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode, and if you're interested in becoming a software developer, learning how to build complex software, and actually get hired, join me at Parsity.io. If you're serious about joining, just schedule a call with me by clicking the link in the show notes below.
Now, micro trends is where you can make your money. This is where you can become a first mover, meaning if you're one of the first people to adopt a micro trend and it becomes a mega trend, then you have the first mover advantage. So a recent micro trend might be like edge computing, micro front ends. I'm trying to think of any other thing that's kind of bubbling up on the surface. TRPC is a micro trend in front end web development now. This is a different way of like handling API calls and things like that. Anyway, if you can identify some micro trends and things that are kind of buzzworthy that you're reading about online, maybe somebody just released a very new framework. And you're like, maybe I'll jump on this new framework. Because at one point, Vue was a micro trend and now it's become a mega trend, right? So if you were one of the first movers to adopt it and really got into it, you have that advantage. It means that the pool of candidates is really small. So as it grows and more companies adopt it, the pool of candidates is still small and they can't find people. So what do? They increase the salary for the people that do know it. You also have the advantage of being an expert in a relatively small field at this point because not that many people know this stuff. So you have higher salary, quicker career trajectory, and the chance to become an early expert. This happened with React. This is happening kind of right now, I think, with Next.js, if I'm being honest. I see Next.js, it's a mega trend for sure, but it's still in the stages where a lot of companies have been kind of slow to incorporate it. And a lot of developers I noticed aren't really jumping on the Next.js bandwagon as much as I thought. I feel like a lot of people are still using Create React App or Vite. And if they're coming out of boot camps, they're certainly not using Next.js, except at Parsity. Know damn well we are. But if you're not doing that, as it becomes a mega trend, which it will have to be, honestly, because Next.js is the new framework for React.js. React.js is going to abandon Create React App. I don't know what the future of Create React App is, but I'll be very shocked if it sticks with us going forward. So if Next.js is what you must learn and what they're saying you have to learn, and as they make React more tightly coupled with Next.js, I don't see a future in which all companies using React.js don't eventually move into something that resembles Next.js or Remix.js or some other framework that supports React. I see that becoming a big, big thing. I think it's going to open the floodgates in another year or two. And who's going to be the first to take advantage of that? People that are learning Next.js. This is just my theory. Maybe I'm totally off base here. This is just what I think. Now, before I let you go, here's some corny advice. It's also just true, right? So I've said this before. I have this online coding school. And I mention that because it's exposed me to a lot of people that are learning to code. And I've been doing this over my whole career. So in addition to working as a full-time software developer, I also have always had my hands in teaching people. I find it really enjoyable. I also know how much it's helped me in my own career. Like people that just gave me the right advice at the right time was super valuable. I probably grew more in like 9 months at one job just from the people that I was around than I did in like 4 years at another job. So that's how powerful listening to the right people and being in the right place at the right time can be. Sitting next to people that were really high performers, that gave me a massive boost, right? It taught me all sorts of things I never would have normally known. So it gave me the experience that I'm super grateful for. And if you don't have that benefit, I hope that this show kind of offers you that in some way. But the reason I do this show or I talk about how to become a better developer or give you advice, because I really want to help you out because I know how powerful that can be. And it can change your life, if I'm being honest, right? Like going from making, barely getting by to making hundreds of thousands of dollars, that is life-changing. Even just doing something you're proud of doing is life-changing. Like when I got into coding, the money was definitely not, it was definitely not big, right? I was not getting a big fat bag, but I felt a lot of joy and pride in what I did. I liked going to work. I enjoyed what I did. And that was life-changing. It really helped me to open up space in my mind for other things. So I was happy when I went home, happy with my kids. I just felt proud. And that's a feeling that I want to hope to give to other people. So there's one single trait, though, that I've seen over the years that separates people that gets hired from those that don't. Think about this a lot because I'm always trying to think of new ways we can help people at Parsity get the job. And when I come back to it, after racking my brain, I'm like, is it that they, live in a certain area? Is it that they learn these certain technologies? Was it that they came in more prepared than the other person? And I'll just be honest, that none of those things have panned out. Like none of those things have seemed to make a significant difference. And I'm talking about hundreds of people over almost 10 years that I've helped. There's one singular trait, and it's really corny. Some people quit. Some people didn't. That's it. That is literally it. I've met people that have computer science degrees could barely get hired after a year. I've met people that could barely code their way out of a paper bag, hired before boot camp is over. I've met people that came in there after tons of studying and knew everything and came in there and killed it and couldn't get hired for a year. And I've seen people that just like barely could write a for loop, come in, kind of bumble around and then get hired. I'm not saying one is more likely than the other, or that like you should not try your hardest to be really good at coding and understand these concepts. I'm just saying that there's not much rhyme or reason that I can really genuinely tell you that's going to be the difference between you and the other person. Not your portfolio. It's not networking. It's a combination of all these things, but it's also just not quitting. This isn't to say that you can just suck at coding and just like magically get hired by just being persistent. That's silly. But if you're persistent, you keep learning, you keep applying advice and the things that you're seeing as you go forward. Like, let's say your resume sucks and then you recalibrate your resume, or let's say your portfolio projects suck and you keep doing that. Basically, if you keep learning on the way towards the ultimate goal, which is getting hired, I don't see a path in which you don't get hired. I just don't. I cannot imagine that a person that has some skill level that doesn't quit and actually changes up their strategy when things aren't working doesn't get hired. Never seen it happen. Never. You can quote me on that. Never seen it happen. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. I know around this time of the year, people are starting to think of, what am I going to do in the new year? What's the thing I'm going to do? Exercise, eat better, new job, right? I can help you out with one of those three things. So if your goal is to get a new job in the new year, work with me and my team, I think you should join now because I have a very special new program that's coming on. If you're listening at this part of the episode, you're probably the person I want to talk to anyway, because you've sat through this and you are fully engaged. I have a program that's coming out. It's with me and my buddy Zubin. Zubin is an ex-Google software engineer. He's a lawyer that turned software engineer, got to Google, got to some really high growth startups, has an amazing story. He and I want to open up a program. This program is highly customized. It is super personalized. It's one-on-one with you, taking you from zero through software engineer. Whether you want to go to Google, whether you want to be back-end, front-end, full stack, we're going to work with you to understand, one, what you really need to do. Two, how to make a plan and how to make a schedule that's going to lead to your success. And three, we're going to work with you creating a custom curriculum specifically for you to help you get to that desired path. If you're interested in doing that, the only way you can do that at this point is to schedule a call with me. We're not taking applications. We're not taking people that just have the money. We're taking people that we really feel we're going to give the best results to. Zubin and I have been doing this for a while. We have tons of testimonials. You can check out the page parsity.io inner-circle, parsity.io/inner-circle. If you want to be part of this very exclusive club for the new year and basically guarantee your success, schedule a call with me. Hope you have a great Christmas if you don't hear from me before then. And as always, thank you for listening. See ya.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.